I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Theo de Jager, President of the World Farmers Organization. The floor is yours.
No matter which continent you come from, which language you speak, no matter which the religion, the race, the culture, which version of the history of mankind you would prefer, the story we tell about ourselves all start the same. In the beginning, there was a family, and they were farmers, raising livestock and planting crops, and multiplied, and they spread across the globe, and they passed on knowledge and experience and expertise and skills from generation to generation. And in the process, some started to specialize, and villages and towns and cities developed. And today, people across the globe, of which we are on the way to 60% of the population living in cities, can practice thousands of professions, because there are still some of us who produce food and fiber and fuel, feeding the world 3 times a day, 365 days a year. But today's families on farms face new challenges which those before us never had to face. Across the globe, big farmers grow bigger, and small farmers in an ever smaller world, in which farmers are every day in competition with the best other farmers in the world, drop out of the industry. Up to the point where it became imperative for the United Nations, especially for FAO and IFAD, to launch a decade for family farmers. You see, the biggest war of our generation is a war on poverty and hunger. And how ironic that the very producers of that is also amongst the most vulnerable, the needy, the hungry families. It's not that we do not have enough food in the world, but the food is not where the people are hungry. Now, there are 2 approaches to this war, and it became very evident in the deliberations over the last 2 days. There are those who say we must raise awareness and sympathy, and we must raise more donations and development aid. And there are those who say we must raise the bar. We must embrace technology and modernization and mechanization. And in the hammer mill of the 4th Industrial Revolution, the digitalization of agriculture. Now, in the World Farmers Organization, we chose the latter route. We believe there's only one way to eradicate poverty, and that's through the creation of wealth. And there's no sector of the economy of the world who is better positioned to do that in a shorter space of time and on a broader basis than agriculture. You see, very often, from the angle of a farmer, it seems that we spend too much, both in terms of money and time and energy, to keep our farmers poor. For us, there's a kind of an over-romanticization of poverty. And we are surely not there to entrench poverty, we are there to eradicate it. And no one is better positioned to do that than the current generation of family farmers. Because farmers learn more from other farmers than from anyone else. And in the tension which we have sensed over the last 2-3 days in these deliberations, the very core was addressed in the definition of family farmers. We heard about definitions from academics and from policymakers and from the United Nations, some even defining it as those families who spend or who do more than 50% of the work on their farms themselves. Now, immediately you call for an answer. Why 50? Why not 60? Or why not 40? These artificial definitions will not stand the test of time, because family farmers won't be defined by anyone else. They want to define themselves. Family farmers are not necessarily poor or wealthy. You will find them on all 6 continents. They are not archaic or modern. They are not young or old. They have this one thing in common. They are families practicing land-based enterprises which they own and control to produce food, fiber, and fuel, and who, by the vast majority, have their homes on their farms. Actually, 2014 left the world a little poorer by a very narrow definition of the concept of family farmers, which I sincerely hope we can break out in the next decade. But we have a decade for family farmers because, like never before, the very concept of the family farmer is being threatened to the verge of extinction by corporations taking over and dominating entire value chains, by trade wars, like our colleagues in the USA and China, by embargoes, like we see with our colleagues in Russia and Europe. We're praying every day that the politicians would stop using our produce to knock each other on the head every time they cannot find a solution for problems which have nothing to do with agriculture. From dumping, like the chicken and soy value chains, which really make our colleagues suffer in East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, by wars, like in Somalia and Syria, by rebels and armed insurgents like in Eastern Congo and Nigeria, like crime disrupting entire value chains, like the avocado value chains in northern Latin America, by land grabbing, like Madagascar and elsewhere in Africa, by climate change, fires, floods, droughts, and hurricanes. You see, we always had these. Climate change just means that we have more of them and more intense now. Spare a thought of those who feel that their path came to an end because of threats of farm attacks and farm murders in my home country in South Africa, and threats of expropriation without compensation like in Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. Family farmers create more jobs than anyone else in the world. In Southern Africa, for example, we found that 10 farmers farming 10 hectares each create nearly twice as many jobs as one farmer farming on 100 hectares. Family farmers are the reason why we still have villages and small towns, and they keep them alive. This year, our General Assembly of the World Farmers Organization had the theme, The Farmer's Route, trying to map out the way which is in the best interest of the world's farmers. So I want to challenge you today to follow the farmer's route. Dream with me of a day within our lifetime when we will live in a world without hunger. day when we would be able to say, we have slain the dragon of poverty. Dream with me, and then roll up your sleeves and put your fingers in the soil.
Thank you, WFO, for these remarks.